What's going on, everybody? This is Mindful Politics. This topic that I'm going to be talking about is very a common problem that we're facing, and I want to talk about this because it's important we don't do this thing that we're seeing happen, and I'm going to explain why this is. You may not want to, well, we'll get into that later, but basically we're going to talk about anger and how anger spreads, and so how basically anger and angry speech, which is what I'm going to call it, and stuff like this, is actually radicalizing people. It's doing the opposite of what people think it's going to do. Like, I don't know what people think they're doing when they're doing this, because it's not helpful. This is something that took me a while to really realize, because I've seen this with people everywhere. They do this thing where they use these angry tones in speech. Like, news does this all the time. Like, it's really ridiculous to me how biased the news is, honestly. You can have bias to me. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I have my own biases. The bit difference is, in most cases, I try not to do what they do. Like, they basically do exactly the opposite of what I do here. I'm actually trying to be nuanced and rational. And most of the time they're just like, Republican bad, Orange man bad. It's like, I mean, yeah, we can talk about some of the things that are bad about Trump, but that's not, your speech isn't fixing the problem. It's making it worse. Of course, I could say the same thing for Trump to a certain extent. That's probably even more true in some ways, but two wrongs don't necessarily make a right. And it's basically where I'm going with this one, because honestly, it's a little immature behavior, I think, to do this. And it's really sad, because if people didn't use angry speech in this way, like if they didn't use what I'm going to call separation consciousness speech, sounds like a very spiritual word, but it is kind of what it is. Separation based speech, at least you could call it. Like us against them kind of a speech, then we might be in a better situation. Like, this is one of the things I think that made Obama work in a lot of ways. Like, he may not have been amazingly good at this, but he was better than everybody else nowadays. Like, everybody's so stuck on the other side and how bad they are and stuff like this, and it's just like, there's a place and time for this. Like, I've done my episodes where I've talked about the problems of the left and all this stuff, but I try not to do it in this way. Because what it does, well, I think there's a couple of things that it does, honestly, but the main thing that I think it does is it dehumanizes people in your mind, because they're not a person at that point. They're basically just an it. That group is not made up of people. They're made up of evil its that we have to crush in some way. Maybe not extreme as that, but things like this. And it's not healthy at all. Like, it doesn't... like, if you're one of those people, I know how that works. I used to be one of those people. And it's not pleasant at all. Like, you're not satisfied. with your life if you're doing this. Like, if you are, then you're even more unhealthy than I was at the time. But, this is why we need to start learning how to radicalizing speech. Because you may think that this kind of radical speech does nothing. Like it's just speech, David, what are you talking about? You're dumb. This kind of thing, right? But actually it does. It inflames emotions, it inflames tensions, because feelings don't actually care about your facts. There's people using this phrase like, facts don't care about your feelings. It's like, well, actually, that's not how it works. There's an interesting idea. I don't know if it was actually something that you can find in a science or whatever, but that was basically stating that, what was it? Like, your reasoning faculties are so new, they're not really programmed into your decision-making process. And so what really happens when you make a decision, when you believe something or whatever, is you have an emotion. Good or bad emotion, right? And then you make the decision. Because actually, and if somebody has any sources on this, I'd like to hear about it in the comments, because I'm still kind of looking through all this stuff and I'm like, where is all this coming from? So I want to do more information searching on this, but basically there are people, I don't know if this is actually true, but I've read this in like a lot of kind of more heavy science type books and stuff. There are people who have no emotion center, and they can't actually make a decision at all. They don't know how to make a decision. Like I said, I don't know if this is actually true. This is what I mean by, like, when I do, I try to make sure to make that point, because it's very easy to know, or it's very easy to tell yourself and others, oh, this is what's true and false. It's like, well, maybe it isn't. I don't know. It's actually called, I want to do an episode on this channel, actually. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's very interesting. But, yeah, basically, like, they can't make they can't make decisions at all. Like, should I wear white socks or black socks or whatever? Like I said, I don't know if this is actually true, because I haven't read any studies on this, but this is very interesting to me, because it's like, kind of debunks this whole idea that facts don't care about your feelings. And this is why you have to be very careful about these kinds of sayings, because, I mean, they're funny and stuff, but it's like, the false things that are said in those sayings are now spread to everyone, and this group of people believes it and talks about it, and it's like, no, actually, there's no evidence to support this at all. But anyways, going back to what I was talking about. What am I talking about? You're probably thinking, like, this guy rambles more than anybody I've ever known in my entire life. So basically what I'm talking about is us against them speech. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, what about the 1%ers that, we have to, like, fight against them and all this stuff. So one book I want to read eventually is called The End of Power. It's talking about how Like a lot of the people who think they're actually powerful, they're actually not as powerful as they were. Like power has been decaying over time. It's not as powerful as it used to be because there's a lot more red tape and stuff involved, and there's a lot more going on. Businesses are similar in this way. Like there are literally businesses that can lose $1 billion or more in a day through stocks or whatever. And so my response to this is business people are people too. And they're probably at this point like so aware that like you can not aware, that's not really the right phrase, but like they have their own problems trying to figure out how to keep this thing going in some way. Like I said, I'm not going to say that they're perfect and they're saints or anything like that. There's different problems. I'm reading this book that I might review on this episode, and perhaps on my podcast as well. But talking about how we don't understand automation, and that basically automation is not as automation based as we think it is. Like there's a lot of work involved, and there's a lot of moderators and stuff, and things like this. So I want to go into this in this book because it's very interesting to me to kind of read this kind of stuff, and it kind of makes you like think, wait, oh, yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, they have another take within it that's kind of like it has that racism element to it, whether you disagree or not. I'm not going to say it's completely wrong because I don't think it's about racism. Like I've said before, it has more to do with the lack of cultural melting pot type of thing, right? One neighborhood, usually the way I've seen it is like you have a neighborhood. This isn't always true, like I said. And in this neighborhood, you might have only one race, or mostly one race. So you might have other races, but in the majority of the cases, especially in these inner areas, it'll be like one area, one race type of thing. And so this can create a lot of stereotypes, especially if you watch a lot of like shows and stuff that kind of promote these stereotypes. And so there's an argument about like, you could have this argument about like how these stereotypes aren't good for these types of situations because it can engender this kind of like misunderstanding about people in this other race. And that's an argument I think we could have, but to call it racism doesn't really explain what's going on here, to be honest. But anyways, that's why I always attempt to be nuanced and fair with all this stuff, because when you use us against them speech, there's a couple things that happen. Basically what I mean by us against them is like you go, oh, they're the bad ones, we're not causing all these problems that they're saying, they're evil and they're dumb and they're, fake news and all this stuff. Like I said, just because I'm saying that it's not a good idea to say those things doesn't mean that some of the times when they say these things, they aren't partially correct, right? When somebody like Trump is saying that the news is fake news, he's talking about a lot of situations where the news is fake news, like Covington Gate. They got Amber Heard situation wrong. Things like this. And that's appallingly common in so many ways that, like, you have to just look at it and you have to go, what? This kind of thing, right? But to call them that they're just, fake news in this way is necessarily correct. Like there's times when you can find that it is probably correct. In some way, like there's kernels of truth in every worldview, basically. And if you are willing to take this job up, basically what you can do is you can try to find these kernels of truth within these worldviews. But most people don't really want to do that because it goes against their own tribe and stuff, which is fine. But if you want to feel better about your life, being angry isn't really going to help you in that situation. You may think that's going to save the world, but it's not. It's actually going to make it worse and worse and worse. Which is why we're hearing stuff about about civil war and peaceful divorce and all that stuff, because people just cannot stop using this kind of language, this kind of separation-based language. How much time am I?
Backpack. Pause. Button. Pause. Time recorded. Recording 1 second. 2. Speech off.
Alright. I don't want to go too long here because when I do that, it doesn't really work out too well. Anyways. So, basically, like Us Against Them has like a lot of characteristics that are more black and white. You know, like you have a speech from any kind of party or any kind of news site or whatever, and they're like, oh, look at these Republicans. They're all, they're all Nazis and, this kind of thing. Of course, you can see this on the right as well. The left look at the left. They're so dumb. Liberalism is a mental disorder used to be a thing that they used to say on Twitter a lot. I don't know if they said it as much, but that's what I'm talking about. Things like this. Us Against Them speech. And so are you aware of your speech? How do you deal with this? How do you stop yourself from letting your anger control how you think? Because that's really what's happening. It's not like your average news organization or person or whatever that's doing this is like doing this consciously, going, oh, these people. What's really going on here is that their emotion of anger or whatever takes over, and that's when that starts. And so the goal isn't necessarily to stop the speech through like censoring of yourself. It's actually to find ways to calm yourself down from this anger through things like meditation, deep breathing type stuff. And so if you ever find yourself getting this way, getting angry, and you feel like posting on Twitter, oh, how dare they do this or whatever, there's a couple of things to do, right? One of the big ones is to just start to take deep breaths like this. We can do this together. There's a thing you can kind of do too. I forget what it's called. I think it's called the OJ or something like this method. It's like a yoga thing. But basically what you do is you make this kind of noise. It's like your throat kind of locks up, but it's not like complete kind of thing. If you want to make it even deeper, which makes you become more stable kind of thing. So now, how are you feeling? Once you do that for 5 or 6 breaths or whatever, right? That's the question you ask yourself. if you want to know how to do all this, the direct result, how am I feeling now before I start the meditation, basic deep breathing practice, and how do I feel afterwards? Sounds very like weird to ask these questions, but it gets you closer to what's really going on, and you start going, oh, this is what he's talking about. Because right now you're probably like, David, you're dumb or whatever, you know. No, the meditation is starting to become more accepting, or accepted, not accepting. That too, actually. But, this is something we need to learn how to do. If we find ourselves getting angry, instead of commenting on in our heads or out loud or whatever, we need to learn to take a little break for it doesn't take very long usually, in my case at least. It may take a little longer for you, but usually it takes me 5 or 6 breaths at most. Deep breathing deeply, breathing for more than 3 or 4 seconds usually. Something like this. And if you want that breathing process to be more stabilized, you can do this Ujjayi, I forget how you pronounced it, breathing. It's basically like there's this part of your throat, I don't know what it is exactly, but it's sort of like you semi-press it down into the lower part of your throat. So you almost press down in the middle or the back of your throat with your own throat muscles for a second, and it goes down. You don't have to press it anymore, kind of thing. You don't have to press it too hard, really. It's not a super hard thing. It just kind of comes down somehow. But anyways, I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but hope this helps to calm you down in these kinds of moments, because it's necessary to really start to do this. If you're looking for a better practice, a practice that can help us to deal with these things and create more mindful speech, which is what I'm going to call it, which I might make a deeper episode on in the future on this YouTube channel. So anyways, hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll talk to you in the next one.